So here I am with the famous Jon McNaughton. Jon, what a pleasure to be here with you today. You and I have spoken before in the past, and I'm very honored to be interviewing you, and I'm very honored to be talking with you, given the fact that I've known
Thank
about
you.
your artwork
Great to
for
be
some
here.
time. Yeah, and so Jon, I thought I'd sort of, everyone who's watching this presumably knows quite a bit about you already, and for the uninitiated listener, right? Let's paint a bit of a picture of your background and who you are and kind of where you came from. And let's go right back to sort of, I guess, when you started doing what you now are famous for, right? These political pictures, these political paintings, which have become, I would say, symbolic and, eponymous, synonymous in some ways with Trump's America. And from that perspective, I'm quite interested. You were previously, not an artist, or I guess you were not a hobby artist, right? And so what were you doing before that? And talk a little bit about, 2008 when you kind of got into this area, and sort of what you were doing at the time. And let's paint a bit of a picture for the listener.
Yeah, thanks, George. Yeah, well, I've been painting for about 40 years and was doing it. I had my own gallery at the time doing landscape paintings up until about 2009. And that's when I did my very first political painting. And it was inspired, and I've told this story before, it was inspired by the election between Obama and McCain. And the day I found out that McCain got the nomination, I was depressed. And I was thinking about it, and I had an idea of a painting. It happened to be the one on the wall over here. I always show people One Nation Under God. This was the painting. This is actually the original hanging on my wall. It's this huge painting. That's what started the whole thing. Because up till then, I was a happy landscape painter, very relaxed, no stress. But it was my way of expressing of what I felt was going on in the United States at the time. It was kind of a tipping point. And so from there, I just continued to paint political images, and really changed everything. At first, I thought, hey, I'm just using this as my way to express how I feel. And I was surprised to find that so many people felt the same way. And now all I do are these conservative political paintings. It's become quite a journey.
Yeah, that's interesting that your first one was that picture of Christ holding the Constitution. I think that's such a symbolic picture associated with your brand. And of course, you yourself are a man of faith. Tell us a little bit about your background. I guess it's, you're from Utah. I know that you,
Yeah, well,
I read that you went on a Mormon mission when you were younger. So, talk to us a little bit about that.
yeah, I came from a Mormon LDS background. And in the Mormon faith, it's very much, that we believe the Constitution was divinely inspired. And so a lot of that has rubbed off on me. I've my views right now are very much, looking forward to what America, the potential that America has, hopefully to get out of the situation that we're in, because it is a very dangerous situation in America right now, where we have the possibility of becoming, a socialist, even communist type country, and it's scary. And so there's kind of a war going on, a soft war, in terms of getting the ideas out there, and I use my art as a way of expressing that. I'm one of the few artists that will actually mix religion and politics, and that's one of those areas that is considered taboo by a lot of artists. But that's, for me, art is all about expressing how you feel, and I can't think of a better way to do that than in bringing those emotions and to not shy away from those topics.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. You reminded me of my wife when you said that, because she says we are in an information war. And I think that there's some truth to that, because of course, the idea of a conventional war, I mean, you're seeing obviously some rumors of wars, and around the world right now, but the idea of a conventional war is probably a little bit defunct, in as much as the age that we live in now is driven by technology. And that, I kind of want to talk more about that shortly, but I think that point that you just made, that we are in a war, we're in a war of information, we're in a war of knowledge, of truth. And so I think what your art, comes to talk about is much more the truth side of things, like what is the truth? I just want to touch on some of that, to kind of taking that theme of truth and what inspires you a little bit. I mean, my history with your name, I think a friend of mine ordered me a print of yours from when he was about 2016, 17, I think it was. And the most emblematic, symbolic picture for me of Jon McNaughton is the Forgotten Man, the one behind you on your wall. Well, that's actually Forgotten No More. The Forgotten Man, of course, plays on that sort of thematic that, has been a dominant political theme for quite some time, about, the working class, the forgotten man. What inspired you, I guess, that inspiration came clearly on the back of the election in 2008 and 9 as well. And sort of, how did you describe your feelings at the time of painting it? Describe what you felt, because I think that there was a dark patch for many people in the country who didn't see the same vision for the future that, the incumbent at the time leadership of the country was aspiring to. Describe your feelings and emotions, sort of painting that, and what you hope to achieve with that picture.
Well, the Forgotten Man painting was inspired by one of the first things that Barack Obama tried to do when he became president. He pushed through the Affordable Care Act without the support of most Americans. And in my view, he trampled the Constitution. So I had the idea of doing, I think it was in 2011 when I did that painting. And I wanted to, show this man, this downtrodden man that felt like he didn't have many opportunities, that he was forgotten, and he represented all Americans, not just white men, but everybody. And then behind him were all the presidents. And then on one side, you had Obama standing on the Constitution smugly. You have Madison, reaching down like, what are you doing? And then you see over on the right side, some of the presidents are applauding while some of them are pointing to the forgotten man, like what, you've forgotten why we're here. And so I did this painting early on, and it was very popular. It resonated with a lot of people, but it had a resurgence in 2016 during the election. And, I had showed this painting to Sean Hannity, and he really liked it. And, we kind of would talk about it. And a few weeks before the actual election, I sent an email to Sean and I said, I really think Trump's going to win this, because I think the forgotten men and women of America are going to finally stand up to what's going on, and they're going to vote in Trump. And of course, at the time, Trump was losing in the polls. So I didn't hear anything from Sean. And then the day of the election, all day long on his radio program, he was talking about how we need the forgotten men and women to stand up, and we need them to vote. And if we do that, Trump can win this. And that night, of course, it was a nail biter. And when Trump finally won, and he won in a landslide, he stood up and he said that it was because of the forgotten men and women of America that I'm standing here today. And then the next morning, Sean called me. He purchased the original, which is quite large. It's a big painting. And then he talked about it all day long. So it was neat, that I tapped into that feeling that really is what carried Trump, the forgotten men and women of America. And I got to be a small part of that. So this is a historic painting. And all of my works, I want them to be relevant to what's going on right now in history. So that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interview that at the time Sean did with Tucker, and they talked about your painting, and actually I remember a friend of mine in London was watching that interview and said, have you heard of this artist? And I said, yes, I had. And he was like, we've got to go and get some of his work. And I said, sure, go for it, and that was kind of where the collection began for a few of my friends in the UK, and sort of, I guess, your popularity started to rise. I mean, was that, when did you, I guess one of the interesting dynamics for you, of course, was, you worked in finance, you weren't, as you said at the beginning, kind of like a traditional artist. But when did you kind of realize that you must have had this epiphany one day when you were kind of like, wow, commercial success for me looks very different to looks very different to the financial world, and that maybe I'm not going to be in the finance world.
You do your research.
Yeah.
Few people ever ask me about that. So I went to art school on an art scholarship. I was going to be an artist. I was going to do it. And then after I graduated, I was like, how do you make money at this? So I ended up getting a job selling mutual funds and being we had to get all my licenses. And I did that for 8 years. And I hated it because I'm an artist. I did well at it, but I finally had a little bit saved up, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take the leap. And all my clients thought I was crazy. And basically I starved for about a year trying to get things going. And then it started to happen. And I started to be able to make a living as an artist. This was back, doing it full time. That was about the year 2000. And so I opened my own art gallery, and just selling my paintings. I was doing landscapes, and I did that for about 8 years. And then I finally started doing what I'm doing now. So yeah, for 8 years, I was doing something totally different. My brain had to readjust from being completely right brain to using the other side. And now it's a little more balanced, but boy, I tell you, I was a fish out of water trying to do that for a while. And I don't get asked that question very often. But you're kind of a finance guy, so you probably thought that was interesting, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what motivated me to ask about it, because I'm not a creative. My wife and I, she's, for those who don't know, my wife is Candace Owens, and her brain is the creative one. She's the inspiration. She's incredible in so many ways, and I'm more, I have creative vision, but not in the traditional creative avenues. I'm a creative financial brain, etc., strategy, stuff like that. But for me, I could not ever cross that Rubicon. I don't have the talent to do it by any stretch of the imagination, but B, it would take such an adjustment. So for you to do that, I just find it to be phenomenal. And then, of course, not just to do it, but then to become so successful in what you're doing. And I think that that's such a powerful testament to your work. And how much of a vein you've tapped into in America.
It's so interesting that you're even saying this. I've never talked about this before, but when I was doing financial planning, I'm such a visual person. I had to create an imaginary world in my mind where I was a great financial advisor, because on the outside, I knew it wasn't true. But on the inside, if I could create that illusion in my mind, I could make it happen. And so, I use the same thing today. I read the news, I analyze it, and then I create these visuals in my mind, these metaphors or parodies that can express what's happening in the country in a way that on the outside, people will look at it and go, what kind of crazy mind did this come from? But then when they really look at it closely, they see the serious undertones. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
no, you are. I mean,
it's interesting.
That's a great way of describing it. And I mean, that actually kind of leads into something that I want to ask you about, and I've kind of always been interested in. How do you kind of decide your next work? Because there's such a varied range of talent. I mean, I think the underlay to our interview right now is a picture of Trump, Dinesh, and my wife. And you sent me this picture, or you sent me a screenshot of the picture, and you were like, I hope you like this. And I was stunned and amazed, of course. And I think it's incredibly cool. And you sent me a copy, and I have it hanging in my man cave, as I said before we began the interview, alongside some incredible pieces of memorabilia politically from across the Atlantic, as well as Americana. But how do you kind of decide what you're going to do next? Because it's such a like it must take such genius to do that. And I certainly will be beyond me, but how do you kind of decide that? Do you sort of sit down and go, you know what, a picture of Trump leading the charge, leading the drums, with Dinesh as the piper and Candace as the side drummer, is what's needed in America? How do you decide that?
Yeah, that's another good question. So I keep a going list under my desk here of ideas that I've been kind of germinating for a long time. And sometimes these ideas are well over a year old. Sometimes they're fairly new. And the ones I'm the most excited about are the ones that tend to go to the top and that I end up painting. And so, for example, the one of Spirit of 2024, which is the picture where I used your wife, Candace Owens, as one of the figures. That's based on a famous painting called The Spirit of 1776, a very iconic American image. And so I thought I can create a parody that actually has a lot of meaning relevant to what we're gunning towards in 2024, the re-election of Donald J. Trump. Something that's very controversial. It's very on the minds of everybody. And I actually decided to paint this shortly after I saw that interview where Candace kind of jokingly mentioned to the president that I'd be willing to be your running mate, And I was like, okay, that's great, And I wanted to use some people that were different, that I hadn't used before. Kind of a, I mean, there's the obvious choices, and then there's strong conservative voices that when people see it, it'll kind of blow their minds. So, of course, Candace, she fit right in there. There was a smaller figure, like a drummer boy in the original painting. So I could put Candace, and then Dinesh D'Souza. I've always wanted to paint him, and I thought when the idea came into my head to put him in that, I just started laughing. It was funny. So I thought this will really drive the left insane. And I don't know, Seth's our producer. Can you put the full image on there? Is that possible? We'll see if he can get it up there. Because at the bottom of the painting, you have Joe Biden in the painting itself. If you look to the right, that's me. Okay. So here is, at the bottom, you see the hand. There he is. There's Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe. He's holding up his mask. And in the original painting, there's actually a figure just like that. I don't know if it's a fallen soldier or they're saluting, but I made that Joe. And then you can see in the background, just beneath the flag, there's a soldier holding something up. That's me holding up my paintbrush. I don't know if you ever noticed that.
I did notice that, and I kind of had always wondered who that was. You look a little bit like, it looks a little bit like Jeremy Boring, who's the CEO of the Daily Wire, and I thought for a second maybe he'd snuck his way in there. But now that I know it's you, it's good. I can correct my
That's before I dyed my beard.
Okay. Well, there you go. But I mean, this is such a fascinating picture, and of course, the symbolism here is so powerful. I mean, we'll go on to talk more about other art you're doing, but it's funny because of course Candace and Dinesh, both prominent Americans, minority Americans who speak about the fact that minority America doesn't belong to a political ideology. And, too long has it kind of been pigeonholed into that. And of course, Dinesh has been a very prominent speaker at Blexit rallies, of course, Candace's organization, Blexit Foundation. And so that, the symbolism here is powerful. And I think what you just mentioned is very interesting, like tapping into that kind of wider vein of characters. And that was something I was just thinking about, because there are so many people now who come across to talk about the issues facing America from the conservative side of the aisle. And, I'm all about free speech, and so he's not on Parler. And, I find that to be fascinating. Now we're getting this increasing resurgence of characters on both left and right, talking about the need for this debate, the need for free speech, the need to kind of have that sensible conversation, I guess. What have you ever thought about doing? And this is a shameless pitch here, and I'm going to throw this right at you on live stream. Have you ever thought about doing a Brexit picture? That's one thing.
I have. I've had some people throw me out suggestions for different paintings with Blexit, and that's one I'd want to do, and of course you would have to have Candace and some other important, Black conservatives in that picture. But it'd have to be in the right context. There'd have to be something about the picture that would be provocative, riveting, and that would really carry the message in a way that, I have to say, one of the ways I know that one of my paintings has really hit home is how the left responds. If they just explode and they just get angry and start writing about it and cursing, and it's all over the place, the trolls are out, and I'm like, hey, I actually hit the nail on the head on this one. And so it's got to be the right one, not just to be provocative for provocative sake, but to have some kind of serious undertone that is unmistakable. So we'd have to kind of brainstorm on that. I would be all for that.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Look, the organization is growing massively, so there'll definitely be a plethora of inspiration to draw from. But I think Blexit would be a very cool picture. That's a shameless pitch I'm going to throw in there myself, but there we
go. That's the plug.
Yeah.
So you'll have to see if Candace has any good ideas on that. I did a painting that was actually based on a famous picture that was taken at the White House when the Black Caucus met with him, and they were all gathered around him, putting their hands on the president and praying. And I used that to create the Legacy of Hope painting. And I think Candace might have been one of the people in that picture originally. I probably turned her into some famous patriot from the past or something. But so that was kind of fun. Yeah,
I was there that day, and it was inspiring to be there, I have to admit. And it was an incredible feeling of hope, I think, in the community at the time.
Yeah, I love what's happening with the Blexit. It's great.
Yeah, it's a great movement to be a part of. So let's talk about your latest project, and obviously what we're working together on. And I find this to be fascinating. And you've tapped a nascent market, NFTs, and as an artist, it is undeniable that NFTs are now a part of the art world and paradigm. And so how did this conversation begin? I mean, I've worked with your team, you and I have spoken before, of course, but how did this begin? And I guess, how did it sort of grow? Where did it begin? Where did it start? Talk us through the journey a little bit, and then we can talk about what the actual NFTs are.
Yeah, sure. Well, I really started taking notice of NFTs around March of last year. I started reading about them, didn't know what they were, just like everyone else, tried to educate myself. And I kept thinking, at some point, I'm probably going to get involved in this, because I see it as a really strong future way of getting my art to more people than I ever have before. And especially the message that I have as a conservative, because there really aren't very many conservative artists that I've seen doing anything in the NFT world. It's wide open. And so but I wasn't sure how that was going to happen, because I don't have any of that technical knowledge, and I'm not going to just start, going full time trying to find people that can promote me that way. I just sort of sat back and was looking, maybe something will happen in the future. Well, I was approached by somebody it was late summer. I was approached by somebody that had a lot of background in the NFT marketplace. He had set up a platform that was going to be focused on conservatives selling NFTs for different purposes. His name's Jesse Herman. And he approached me, and I just started having a conversation. And the more he explained to me what it was, the more I saw that I could use this as a great way to open up new ideas to a lot more people. And what I mean by that is I've done some calculating, and I figure by the time I'm dead, if I have 150 political paintings, I'll be lucky. I mean, I only do 5 or 6 a year. And so that's a body of work that's typical for a lot of artists, and of course they'll all be worth a lot more after I'm dead. That's how it goes. I'm fortunate that I've had enough exposure now that I can make a living as an artist. But that's very few originals that the public can have. However, with an NFT, I have the opportunity to create more originals for the public than just the 160. And so we had this concept of doing an NFT collection, and I wanted to build it around President Trump, because I've become known as the painter of the mega movement, the Trump revolution. That's me. I'm the guy. So I've got to paint a collection. And so we started with my painting, Respect the Flag, and I built on it, different types of positions, bodies, backgrounds. And we wanted every single NFT, every non-fungible token to be completely unique and original, so that when somebody buys an NFT, they're the only ones that own it. They're not going to be out there, other people. There's no way anybody can steal it from them unless they give away their information. It's theirs. And I like that idea. So, we're doing a small collection of these NFTs, and they're fun and different. And that's kind of what led to it.
That's very cool. Yeah. I mean, I've worked with Jesse on this project, and he's been a terrific partner, and we were very excited. I mean, when I first saw the collection, I thought, wow, this is really very cool. And I mean, you've been able to, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. I think what you just said there, I want people to have ownership of my work. And that's something which I have not heard before. And, we've been doing NFTs as Parler, or certainly immersed in the NFT market for quite some time. I mean, it's a relatively new market. So everyone to some extent is still a newbie.
Right.
But, we've probably been around in this, for quite a few months now. So, that's old school in some ways. But no one has yet said to me when they've talked about this, I am an artist and I want people to have more exposure to my work. And I think that stands you out in some ways. You are the de facto Trump artist. There's just no doubt about it. If somebody said, name an artist who's kind of the painter of the spirit of the MAGA movement, it would be you. So, Seth, can we put up any pictures of the NFTs? Because I think it would be very cool to just show people what's going on right now in terms of being sold.
Yeah.
I think particularly, yeah. I mean, look, I mean, some of these pictures are just fantastic. I mean, like the clown world inspiration here. I'm loving this. And underlaying all of them, overlaying all of them, of course, is the picture of Trump, which you've got so famously here. So, talk to us about him, I guess. Talk to us about your relationship with him. What is your relationship with Trump? Have you met him?
Yeah.
What does he think about these? Is he aware of it? I'm sure he's heard of you.
It's funny you should ask. I've been painting him for 5 years. I met him for the first time last Saturday.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
I flew down to Texas, and I have a friend that had purchased some of my originals. He knew the mayor of Conroe, where he was giving his big rally. And so I had a few minutes with President Trump, and just, one-on-one, and we talked about the paintings. It's funny because when I walked in the room, he looked at me like, who are you? And then I told him I'm Jon McNaughton, the artist. And he pointed at me and his eyes got big and he says, I know you. And he wanted to buy one of the paintings there, and I had to tell him it's already sold. So that was a bummer. But he's got some plans, I think. He kind of indicated he wanted me to do something for him, but we'll see how that goes. I'd been hearing up until then from people that knew him that he really liked the work, but never anything directly. So it was really nice to have that conversation with him. Yeah. He's very gracious to me, and I don't know if he knows about the McNifties. So I don't know. Maybe he does, but we didn't talk about that.
Well, I mean, I think that his team probably have come across it. We've as Parler have been working obviously with Melania Trump, and that's public knowledge. And so, I think that this has probably drifted into sphere of view with a few of these book nifties. But it is a very new space, of course. And I'm going to run with that comment that you just said a moment ago and circle it back up again, because I think that's a very, very interesting way of looking at it. You want people to have ownership of your brand, and you're not going to be able to paint enough during your whole life.
Right.
What does that mean? So, for example, like let's run with that scenario. What does that mean that you're going to be doing, say, for example, many NFT drops? Are you thinking that this is going to be something you would like to pursue in the long run and in the future? What are your kind of business plans here, I guess, a little bit?
Well, I think that what we want to do is build a community around the McNifty brand. McNifty is McNaughton and NFT that have come together. And each collection is going to be limited. Each will be completely different. There's not going to be fractionals. These are all different in their own way. So what we've done is we'll take like a background of a different painting I've done, and we'll have a different painting for different traits. All of these are completely hand painted. And they all have special meaning to them, which, if we had time, I could talk about, like this rooster, which represents the importance of waking up, and that America is in denial. I mean, when you look at them on the outside, they have these sort of outrageous combinations. Like, why would he paint that? But everything means something. But they're all hand painted. Which is unique. You don't see a collection usually of hand painted NFTs. They're typically all digitally created, and almost kind of more of a cartoon aspect, whereas these are hand painted. I wanted them to be classic, in the classic tradition, and filled with metaphor and parody. They're pretty outrageous. You got Trump holding up the serpent, which to me represents the battle against the enemies of the republic. And so we've got some of them where he's holding up the serpent. You got Biden, Sleepy Joe that's unaware. He's standing up behind him, and his hat says, "Let's go, Brandon." So people have fun with these. They're not meant to be dogmatic or just kind of it. They're meant to be fun so that they can be collected.
Yeah.
The painting behind him here is from my Obama foreign policy, where he's golfing while there's a nuclear strike happening behind him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love them. I mean, I think they're very, very inspired. And I think the other thing which is funny about them, of course, is that, you've really tried to hit that niche, I guess, between what you're seeing in the traditional NFT market. And, for those of you who are listening or watching who don't know what that is, the traditional NFT market, I guess, as traditional as something can be, which is very, very new, but the traditional NFT market is kind of, it's computer games, well, it's not computer games, but it's the Bored Ape Yacht Club, it's CryptoPunks, it's Dapper Labs, it's all these quite novel artistic interpretations of, traditional gaming imagery or traditional imagery associated with, like, I would say, like, my computer game character from the late 90s, was probably be
Right.
a very suitable NFT right nowadays. But, what you've done is then taken a picture, an actual painting, which very few people have done. And I've seen on OpenSea, which is the biggest NFT marketplace, kind of a few photographers who have tried to turn their work into NFTs. They run the risk, of course, of plagiarization, because it's very easy to copy that work. And then, of course, as I said, at the other end of the spectrum, you've got, what I would describe as, the ultra kind of new age computer imagery. And so you're falling into this segment in the middle where you've got a traditional painting that you've digitized and you've turned into an NFT. So there's very, very few people operating in that space, which I think is one of the things that makes this offering so unique in some ways.
Yeah. My vision of this NFT marketplace, it is brand new. It's kind of the pioneer phase of everything. And I see that these McNifties, this Trump collection, is going to be historic because it's a snapshot of our time in history. And it's a crazy time we're living in. I mean, the country's never been so divided. Trump is a very colorful character. And whether you like him or don't like him, I mean, he is a part of the American experience. And so 50 years from now, 100 years from now, this very small NFT collection is going to be historic. And that's why I'm so excited about it. And we just hit a milestone. We sold 1,776. And I think we're We're closing in on 1900, and the plan is to cut them off at 45.45. And
Wow.
so this will be a very special historic collection. The next one will be the Biden collection, and that's going to blow people's minds. It won't be called that. It'll be something better. It's going to be amazing. So it's just one thing after another. We want to build this community in the NFT space, and it's really cool that we're able to partner with Parler, and that's fantastic. I mean, you guys have your niche, and you got plans for the future, and it's just cool. I love it.
Yeah. Well, look, Jon, we're super excited to work with you, and we love working with you. And for me, as I said, this is an historic moment to finally interview you. I guess after hearing about you for so long, I mean, you and I have known each other for a little bit of time, but that symbolism, going back to what we said at the beginning, the forgotten man and forgotten no more, which is the one which is sitting behind you on your wall. For me, those were two pictures that became iconic with the Trump era. And, my political friends in London and overseas, knew this picture. They knew this picture because it symbolized an era. And so when I heard you were doing NFTs, I thought, yes, that is the next phase for you. And that's the next phase for your brand. And that's the next phase for I guess where you want to take your business and your model. And I'm so interested, and I'm so excited to partner with you for this next phase.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
Cool. Well, Jon, it's been a pleasure, and we'll talk more. But thanks for your time.
Thanks, George. It's been great.
Great.